Welcome to Snapshots with the Social Regressive. These are short videos as opposed to the usual epic content I put out, so let's go ahead and get to it. There's been a shift recently in kind of the mainstream optics market, and I'm really excited about this, and I just had to pass this along. For the longest time, pretty much everything that you could find, like say back in the 90s, at least here in the US, pretty much everything was a crosshair style of reticle. It was set up for deer hunting, and basically everything was second focal plane. Everything was pretty limited in what you could do with it. Pretty much every company, I guess, had some kind of mil dot eventually, once the 2000s rolled around. And actually the first scope that I ever really bought on purpose, instead of something that came with like a used rifle that I bought or something, was this. This is a Muller Tactical 8.5 to 25 by 44 millimeter scope. I do highly recommend this if you're on a tight budget and you want something you can do milling with. Great scope. I've used this for a long time. I use this on a lot of prairie dogs. Love the scope. But really this, it wasn't all that common to even find, say, a mil dot scope. There might be one in, say, the top tier. Of course, there was the Leupold Mark IV series where you had more of the military style of reticles going on there. You had Night Force, which is definitely a big step up in price. Not so much from the Mark IV, but from everything else. It was difficult for folks that, they just want to get out with a rifle. They want to have some kind of decent reticle where they can range targets. There just really weren't that many options. And just when things were starting to ramp up, I would say, kind of post-war, everybody's kind of concentrating on military style of optics. We kind of got sidetracked, I think, by a lot of these bullet-drop compensating reticles. You can find these everywhere. There's still just scads of these things. And to me, I think they're just too limited. The bullet-drop compensators are cool if you need to have a rough estimate on a larger target. If you want to be able to, kind of figure out your rough drops out at various ranges. And they do work. They're pretty slick. But myself, I've never had an inclination to buy one. I've never wanted a bullet drop compensator. To me, it's just too rough. And really, the sort of targets that I shoot at tend to be very small anyway, like prairie dogs. It's not going to be that useful. I want something where I can very accurately not only figure out my drops at a certain range, but I want to figure out what the range to the target is in the first place. So I want a good milling reticle. And I'll actually be producing a couple videos on some interesting topics related to optics. And one of them is going to be how to estimate range using a scope like a mil dot or a mil hash or something. And this right here, this is one that I went to later. I bought my first Falcon because I wanted something that was even more precise than a mil dot scope. So I ended up going with a mil hash, so it kind of breaks things down further from a full mil down to a half, and I'm able to get more precise measurement. But yeah, anyway, that's something for later. But what's happening right now is that we seem to be swinging back away from the bullet drop compensators, and we're getting back into precise type of reticles, the kind that I like. So we have three big companies that are all simultaneously releasing some very interesting optics. We'll start out at the top end. We have, as far as price goes anyway, we have the Leupold VX3i series. And within that you have hunting scopes on the VX3i side. And then if you go to the VX3i LRP, or long range precision, this is where you start to get into the fun stuff that I like. You get, big turrets with all kinds of, easy markings, easy to operate with your thumb. You don't have to take any caps off or anything. And with that, you're looking at about, I guess, $850, I think, on the top end for some in here. You get a choice of first focal plane or second focal plane, which is really cool. You can typically, I talked about this in another video, and I will be releasing a whole video on FFP versus SFP, but in general, you can get a little bit more precision out of an SFP over FFP, but FFP is easier. Great choices to have, the same scope, and you can kind of pick either. Much like the Falcons that I've been reviewing here, you get a choice of FFP or SFP. Cool stuff. And you also get a choice of minute of angle or Milliradian. This is also an interesting shift in the industry. Everything has been Milliradian for a good long while. as long as you weren't in that BDC world, or, if you're in the hunting world, that was still MOA. But as far as tactical sort of stuff went, it was all Milliradian, and now we're moving back toward minute of angle, which in some cases is going to get you a little bit more precision, but mostly it's just about what you're comfortable with. Here in the States, yeah, we're pretty comfortable with inches rather than centimeters. It's just what we're used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So it makes sense to pick up a scope that works within that system. And most of our ranges are set up for yards rather than meters. I like both of them, I really do. But I can see how a lot of people in the US would want to go toward MOA rather than MRAD. Now, the VX3i LRP, they're going to have really good glass. Everything from VX2 on up has some really sweet glass. I assume that the VX3i, even though I haven't looked through one yet, I'm sure it's going to have some really nice glass on it. It does not offer any illuminated reticles. And so let's move on down to the next price bracket down. This is the Nikon X1000 series. This is just an ad in the American Rifleman. You can probably see these around. So what this does is it kind of takes a similar formula. These are second focal plane only. Everything in this series, I believe, is second focal plane only, but these do start to offer some illuminated reticles on some of, I believe, the higher magnification models, and they do have a really interesting one that is going to be called the Force 1000, and that's one of these AR style of optics that it's just a 1:4. It has a small objective lens. And actually this thing looks really, really cool. This is one of the few AR style of optics that I think I would actually want to buy. It seems to be set up correctly for the way that I like to do shooting. You get precision, you actually get a regular milling sort of reticle, and then they just throw in a big horseshoe. And to me, this makes a whole lot of sense, especially in SFP, because if you're backed off to 1x, you're not going to be using the milling reticle. It's very unlikely that you're going to be, say, shooting at 400 yards or 600 yards in 1x. You're going to be zooming in order to do that. So that's where you're going to get your accurate, your actual milling reticle is actually going to work at that magnification. And then, if you have some kind of close quarter shot, you're backing off to 1x and you're using the horseshoe. Brilliant, brilliant setup. I think it's going to work out really well. Now those come in anywhere from $650 down to, I believe, $400. That's how much that AR one is going to cost. Again, these look really good. Make sure you go check them out. The next step down as far as price goes is the Bushnell Engage series. And these continue in the same vein with a 30mm tube. They continue with, a very complex reticle. And one of the things that I probably didn't mention early on, just because I was getting carried away, is that we're not just looking at a mil dot style of scope. We're looking at something more precise than that. These are mil hash, and what they do is instead of having, a milliradian between stadia, they're going to go ahead and throw in intermediate lines. So you're going to get a half milliradian on the MRAD ones. On MOA, it's going to be splitting those up as well. So you get very precise. Great for long-range shooting, great for varminting. And on this Bushnell Engage line, some of the standouts to me are going to be the 6-24 model. That's going to be very good for varminters. That's one that I would want to pop on a rifle like this. I think it would be a very good match. And then one of the other ones that I hope to get my hands on is the 2.5 to 10 power model. And this one I think would be a good match for folks that are shooting ARs or other, military style rifles. It's going to have a really good zoom range. It's going to be a little bit quicker to work with for one good reason. One of the things you get into with second focal plane reticles is that if you are changing your magnification, then of course all of the values that you might have on your range card or whatever, they're going to be off. They're going to be some multiples or some factor of whatever you have on your card as you start to zoom around. So what you want is something where you can easily kind of factor the change using, in your head. You might have to, switch over to paper or something. But if you want to make easy calculations in your head of what changed as your magnification changed, then having an easy multiple or an easy factor is going to make things a whole lot easier. So a 2.5 to 10 at 10 power, that's going to be your actual MOA measurement. As you back down to 5, it's going to be 2 MOA, where it was 1 before, it'd be 2. And then as you back all the way down to 2.5, it'd be 4. So yeah, easy to multiply, easy to do the math, and especially if you're in the field. So that's one that I'm going to try to pop on my AR a little bit later this year. I'm trying to see if I can get my hands on one. These things are brand new. I don't even know if they're actually selling yet. But I'm going to try to get one on the AR, see how it does. And yeah, I'm really excited just about the total change in the industry in general. I think it's a really good move, especially as people are moving more toward long-range precision shooting or getting into, maybe target shooting. And for varminters like me, it's also a really nice thing. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the destructive arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.